Y para nosotros esta parte de justo antes es súper importante porque es un espacio de crear comunidad, de conocernos y que de aquí puedan surgir nuevas alianzas para seguir este camino hacia el impacto. Pero ahora ya vamos a volver al programa que tenemos establecido y vamos a pasar a una mesa internacional. So I'm going to move to English. So I'm very happy to introduce you the next panel, which will show us one of the most inspiring models in Europe to develop the social economy and the impact investment. So I ask, please, Agustín Vitorica and the rest of the panelists to come on the stage in order that they can have a discussion about the regulation and how the different actors who form the social economy and the impact investment and the social banking have developed such a big social economy in France. So thank you so much for being here. Let's gonna enjoy this panel.
Good afternoon to everyone. I'm going to start with a couple of thoughts about what we heard this morning. At the beginning of the event, we saw some messages saying that the end of poverty is possible, stop the inequality breach is possible, and avoiding climate change is also possible. But to make this possible, we need to mobilize capital at scale. As it was mentioned by Cliff prior, the capital is in private hands. How do we mobilize capital which is in private hands towards a just transition? And to do this, we need public-private partnerships, as the one we're going to see today. Blended finance is an extraordinary instrument to mobilize private capital, but also regulations like solidarity funds is also a very powerful instrument which we're going to dig in today. We saw that impact investing funds in Spain now have assets under management of 436 million euros. This is approximately the size of the impact investing market in France 10 years ago. Today, the impact investing market in France mobilizes 8 times that size. It's mobilizing over 3.5 billion euros in impact investing. How is this possible? We have 3 stellar panelists that are going to explain how is this possible. And these panels, these players come from different actors of the French ecosystem that have been collaborating together to make this growth possible. So on behalf of Spain Up, thanks very much really to the 3 of you for taking the time to come here to Spain and share your experiences. So we have on my left-hand side, Emmanuel de Lutzel from Habitat et Humanisme. We have Stanislas Pottier from Amundi. And we have Gaspard Verdier, I hope I said it correctly, who is a member of the French SNAP, but he's also representing Foundation Nina Carasso. So let's start the panel giving each of you 1 minute to do a brief introduction on who you are and which organizations are you representing. Maybe Emmanuel?
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that I'm working for Habitat Humanisme. Actually, I am retired from the bank. So I've been working for 40 years for the banking, so about 20 years for BNP Paribas and before that for other banks. And I launched the microfinance activities of BNP Paribas and then the social finance activities. And I retired 2 years ago, and I'm now so working as a volunteer of Habitat Humanisme, which is a social organization which has been existing now for 35 years in France. It is in social housing mainly, and it is one of the largest social businesses in France and one of the largest beneficiary of the 90-10 funds we will talk about.
Excellent. Stanislas.
So Buenos días to everyone. I'm Stanislas Pottier from Amundi. I've been in charge of the ESG department for some years, and now I'm senior advisor to the general management and more focused on upstream thinking about responsible investment, responsible capitalism, all these complex issues that then we can translate into business. Amundi is managing roughly 2 trillion euros and is the only non-American asset manager in the top 10 worldwide.
Thanks.
I'm a member of the French NAB, as was said. I'm an advisor to families and foundations on impact investing, and also an advisor to the CREO Syndicate, which is a group of family offices investing for a just and ecological transition. And I'm here representing Fundación Daniel y Nina Carasso, which is a French and Spanish foundation. It's a family foundation created by one of the founding families of Danone. And it works under the aegis of Fondation de France. And it works towards an inclusive and ecological and fulfilling transformation on 2 major verticals. One is sustainable food systems, and one is Arte Ciudadano. That's the extent of my Spanish for today. And it works, of course, in grant making, obviously, but also trying to build networks and mentoring for its mostly NGO beneficiaries. Now, and this will echo a lot of what you've heard from Isabel, I think, from AMESVAD. Since 2015, the foundation has engaged in an ambitious sustainable investing strategy for its 500 million euros endowment. And this includes a 15% commitment to impact investing, which we'll talk about and develop, but in a line that is very similar to what you've heard. But I think I will still repeat a lot of things because this is the way forward, I strongly believe, for foundations. So we'll bang the arguments once again. I think the take that we will take is maybe the specific governance that has been set up by the foundation for its impact investing, which I think is an important point. And I will mention right after some elements of what's been done in Spain so far.
Thanks. Thanks, Gaspar. So this morning we also heard Cliff and Gonzalo agreeing that a fundamental transformation in the financial system needs to take place in order for impact investing to scale in any country. And we have here a pioneer of this transformation, Emmanuel. You were an entrepreneur at a very large commercial bank in France, and you managed to convince this bank to move towards impact. It will be great for our audience to hear your experience on this.
Well, I will try to make it short. I've been a commercial banker until I got interested personally in microfinance. In 2006, I had the idea that microfinance was not a subject of philanthropy, but it was a subject of business, and that it would make sense for the bank to invest in microfinance in a business way, but looking for a social impact. Right. At that time, the bank didn't have even a CSR department, so it was something very new. And I was lucky to convince the top management of the bank to launch this activity. And within the next 5 years, we have been investing something like 50 million euros, so rather small amount for a big bank. Now the bank has something like 350 million in microfinance and more than 2 billion in social businesses, so half of it being in France, the rest mainly in European countries. So it shows that it is important to dare to be a pioneer, to propose something, to innovate, and well, we have been lucky at BNP Paribas that we launched the microfinance activity just before Yunus got the Nobel Peace Prize. And so it came at the right time, at the right place.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks very much. Amazing and inspiring story, you know, what you did in BNP Paribas. Stanislas, I'm going to try to define in 2 seconds what is a 90-10 fund. 90-10 funds are funds that invest 90% in sustainable investments, quoted assets, and 10% in illiquid impact investment. So this is a great way to combine sustainable and impact investing because they are part of the same movement. So I wanted to ask you, Stanislas, what is the role of Amundi in expanding this sector? Who will be the targets to be invested by these 90-10 funds? How do you generate deal flow? And what kind of instruments do you use to invest in these targets?
I have more than 2 seconds, right?
I use my 2 seconds. You have at least 5 minutes.
Well, Amundi was really committed to 90-10 solutions since they were launched regulatory in France 20 years ago. But the development of these 90-10 funds have been very important since 10 years or so because of a legal obligation to propose 90-10 solutions in the employee pension schemes. And again, I think we will have a second booster this year with another obligation for life insurance to propose also 90-10 solutions. We were ready to offer 90-10 solutions, and we were from the beginning of Amundi very committed to employee pension schemes. We have roughly 50% market share in France. So naturally, we were very strong promoters of 90-10 solutions, and it's true that today, out of 2 trillion of AUM, we have more or less 800 billion using ESG screening because we want to boost natural in-house ESG screening for any kind of management. And we also have more or less 5 billion of AUM of 90-10 solutions proposed to different corporates. And based on Amundi Solidarity, Amundi Finance et Solidarité, which is the fund dedicated to those 10%, with 450 million euros invested in really social corporates, solution projects, etc. So our main clients historically and the main booster for the development of these investments in social and solidarity economy were, of course, the regulatory base and employee pension schemes. So it's mixed between retail and institutional because the end client is retail, it's the employee, but you go through trade unions and corporate managements of these of the companies to be able to propose your 90-10 solutions. So you have 2 clients actually, and you have to satisfy both institutional and retail. But
so the end client is always a retail saver that through the company or through the product is subscribing the 90-10.
Exactly, but the mechanism of marketing and being selected and being labeled, etc., is more institutional. Okay. So really be aware of the regulation is of course fundamental in this. And on our part, the capacity to have really an expertise in choosing where you're going to invest the money. Because it reminds me that sometime we had some discussions in France to switch from 90-10 to 80-20. Because retail clients would say, oh, 10% is really low. I want more of solidarity in my fund solution. And we thought that would be a good solution. Yes, it's more credible if you have 20 rather than 10, but where are you going to spend the money? And people said, we stay as it is because we're not sure that we would be able actually to invest the money in real social projects and corporates with a 20% share in the solidarity funds. And the advantage, as I would say, of Amundi in finding the right deal flow and assets in which we can invest is our belonging to Crédit Agricole Group, which is a cooperative mutualist group in France with 39 regional banks that have an intimate connection and knowledge of their territory and of all the projects of social economy and also of cities and local authorities. So it's a real advantage for us in getting the information about nice projects upstream, and also in getting the information to have the right assessment, whether they are good or not.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest challenges for us in Spain. How do you do this assessment in social entities that are not accustomed to get flow from private investment or institutional investment?
These are very specific projects, and they're not necessarily actually more risky. This is very important, but maybe we will talk later about that. But they're more complex. But because they're more complex, once they're set and once they go, actually they're usually less risky because you have a conjunction of local money, local public money, private money, national public money. So all these guys have assessed the project, contribute to its solidity actually, and you have very committed, of course, people also managing these projects.
Stanislas, just before I go to Gaspar, am I right if I say that the movement of the 90-10 funds or the solidarity funds or savings started in private hands before it got regulated by the government, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, well, but maybe you know more.
Right.
There were some private experiments before it was before the framework was, so to speak, labeled by regulation.
I see.
To answer your question, well, the beginning of the story, it started in '95. 3 social businesses, it was Habitat Humanisme, ADI, and France Active. They built together an association, also including 2 social ethical banks, Crédit Coopératif and l'ANEF.
Right.
And they built this association called Finansol for the promotion of solidarity finance. At this time,
Finansol today is the French NAP.
Yeah, and at this time, the concept of impact investing didn't exist.
Right.
So, but Finansol, Finance Solidaire, it's more or less the same concept. And in '97, Finansol started to give a label. I think initially it was something like 15 products, and now it's 150 products, and a total of asset under management. They have revealed the last figures this morning. So last year it was 21 billion, and now it's 25 billion. So last year they had an increase of 18%, and this year they had an increase of 27%. So it's amazing.
Amazing in this.
But it started, as you said, it started in private hands. And those social businesses and those social ethical banks went to the asset managers and said to the asset managers, so can you make a product out of it?
Right. So I think this is a key learning point for Spain now, maybe gaining traction through first pilots in Spain through private money, and then maybe going to the government to provide a regulatory umbrella to this movement that has already proven that is profitable in private hands. But now, Gaspar, you mentioned already one success case of a foundation becoming an important investor in impact investing, Fundación Nina Carazo. But I also heard there are amazing other examples in France, like Caritas Foundation, for instance, which is important in Spain, as we all know. Caritas Foundation in France, you also convince them to move towards impact and start being important investors through impact investing. Can you please share your experience on how you managed to convince foundations to get into these sectors?
Yes, and Caritas is an interesting example. before, before the French NAB was constituted, and even before the task force, they actually began to do some impact investment. And of course, that this whole movement kind of accelerated their approach. But they're an interesting example of a foundation being driven to impact investing just because their beneficiaries, the people that they support through grants, the people that they know well, basically took them by the sleeves and say, look, our model is evolving. We were a traditional NGO, now we are setting up this housing structure for homeless people, and there's a real estate element to that, and we can build an infrastructure and an investment opportunity. Will you be with us? You that know us well and that have always supported us along these years. And if you're not there, it's a question mark for who else would go if the strategic support does not come. And so very naturally they went, and so they did some very edgy type investments, and over a number of years they built up an interesting small fund that is composed of microfinance, very social microfinance, not the asset manager type names that you might think about when you think microfinance. Direct investments in social impact funds focused on employment for people with disabilities or far from the job market, so insertion as we call it in France, and also real estate and housing for people that had difficulties. And it's building an interesting little fund with its own dynamic. It's not geared towards making money and returns, but the story is that they were able, contrary to what you might have thought, not to lose money in a big way. So it's kind of stable, and it's contrary to what we've been describing for other foundations. This is kind of a carve-out. So this is a specific impact approach that is not totally linked to their overall asset management, contrary to Carasso or Amasvad, where it's a fully integrated approach, and impact investing is one way of delivering. And I want to come back to that because I think that's very important in the way that we think about the space, and maybe for you in Spain, is that I think it's very important for foundation to fully play their role in that field, to make sure that there are not two entities, one entity or one person investing on financial markets and trying to make as much return as possible. Yes. To be able to make grants, because that's the engine for grants is the financial investments, and then on the other way, just people disbursing grants. I think it's very beneficial that you are a fully integrated institution working towards your mission, and I think it was touched on that the minute that you do this type of impact investing, in a small way, but in a very effective way in terms of message, you put a cap as an investor that you are investing for change, and it's really giving a signal to the financial markets. We've seen it in a number of funds that the Fondation Carasso, for instance, has been able to anchor. They play a very important role in terms of vetting the impact, vetting the strategy, and the foundations can catalyze money from other people that will come because, if you say sustainable food systems and Carasso is behind, then, there's a theory of change there, and they know what they're talking about in terms of impact. Right. So I think that's very, very important.
Oh, thanks very much. Another, I would say, important takeaway from this round table is a collaboration between the French NAB and the Spain NAB, so that you can bring your expertise, and maybe you can have Caritas España or other big foundations in Spain moving towards impact investing. We already have our success story with Amasvad, but I think it's, showing real case studies or successful studies is going to be very important. Emmanuel, I'm going to ask you one question that strikes me on the evolution of the regulation of the solidarity savings. Is that in Spain, we are too accustomed to, I would say, lack of consensus in political issues. in France, if I understood it correctly, this law started in 2001 and has been reinforced year after year by all governments of different parties. How has this been possible?
It's an exceptional case of consensus in France, because like the Spaniards, we agree to disagree. But in this case, the different governments have been very supportive. I think it is due to a common pressure from the social business sector and the banking sector, or the asset management sector, because it's so exceptional to have them to work together, to build together some products. And it has also some social impact which are evident for the state. So the question is not only to have the big picture, the big vision, but then to go into the details, right, and to build something. And the key date, you mentioned that was 2008, when it was before 2008, well, it has been developing, but very slowly. In 2008, it became compulsory for any company offering employee saving schemes, yeah, to offer, so it is compulsory to make an option and to offer one solidarity fund. So traditionally, people who have would have the capacity to invest in the company shares, or in classical what do you call that? Obligations, or the bonds or whatever. But they must have an option for it. And since then, really, it has been skyrocketing.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so my conclusion is gaining traction first through the private sector, and then getting a regulation that gets enforced, first pension funds, then other saving products, and then, as you said, insurance companies as well.
To get traction politically, use local authorities, because they want to develop their own territories. They want to address social issues, employment, disabled, disadvantaged people, housing, and of course, social economy gives solutions to that. And you have the ESG general pressure on the financial system, and so the financial system wants also to find solutions and products matching these requirements. So, but local authorities are key also in pushing the government and political consensus.
Very good point. Stanislas, I'm going to ask you the 100 million question, which is, what kind of financial return are you asking for this 10% of illiquid impact investing? And if there is any kind of subsidy of financial return, provided by the liquid investments to the illiquid impact investing?
Well, we have some sort of cross-subsidization between some investments with others. But generally speaking, the philosophy is that we're not looking for return, we're looking for security. So we want to invest in good projects. We do not want to lose capital, but the deal is that the return might not be very high. Still, we got an average, I think it's around 345 for the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. So it's not bad, actually. I'm not sure that you really need to say that. We have an understanding that we're more or less looking for a 2% return, but actually we got 2%. We got more than that. But again, really we're looking for security, and you're able to get some return for the overall fund with more secured, more liquid investments. Right. It depends. You have really projects you want to do because you know the impact will be very important, but you know there will be no return. It will be very tight. But they are good projects. You know that there is no much risk for your capital either. And on the other hand, you have some other projects, maybe still, of course, they are social economy. You have some impact. It might be a bit less, but you know it's there is some return because maybe you invest in liquidity instruments that generate for themselves a return, and also interest social corporates or institutions because they also need some cash, etc.
Right,
So,
right.
well, you have different instruments, different ways to invest in those projects or institutions, and this is the science and expertise of managers. They have to mix all this to get something acceptable for your clients.
So I'm going to see now the perspective of one of the recipients, which is Habitat et Humanisme, of the 90-10 funds. What are the requirements in terms of social impact and financial returns that Habitat et Humanisme is getting from the 90-10 funds?
I must say I've radically changed my mind. When I was a banker, I was pleading, when I was saying to my friends of Habitat Humanisme and other social businesses, there must be some return, not only the social return, but also the financial return. And now, I'm very happy that we don't pay any dividend, and we get investors.
Right.
Okay, the situation is a little more complex because we are not dependent on the funds only. So it means we have about 30% of our share issues which are placed with the asset managers, and about 70% placed directly with private investors.
I see.
So about 10,000 private investors. And we don't pay any return to them, but they have a 25% tax break.
All right. So there is a tax relief.
A tax relief, yes.
That's another important
for direct,
regulation to
for direct
increase,
investors,
for
not
direct
for
investors,
asset managers.
Okay. Similar to the UK, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So to answer your question concerning the conditions, we have to prove that we are a social business. Yeah. So it means a business means that we are sustainable.
Right.
Doesn't mean profitable, but it means sustainable. You talked about risks, so that's, we manage our risk. The second aspect is that we are social.
Right.
So we have to prove that we have some social impact.
Right.
And then comes the question, when I started in microfinance in 2006, I had a dream that measuring social impact was a science.
Right.
And now, well, it's like the young doctor and the old doctor. The young doctor believes that medicine is a science, and everything can be written in mathematics and so on. Now, with a lot of experience and having participated to many forums like that, I think actually measuring social impact is an art.
Right.
It's an objective. It is quite important to try to measure, but it is more an objective than really a science. We publish every year at Habitat Humanisme a social impact report, which is 12 pages, so it's rather detailed. Since I am a little perfectionist, so I find we could improve it a lot. But since I am inside the organization, I know also the difficulty to deliver something with the quality of the figures and so on. It is, when you are working for a bank, it's already difficult to have the figures, but in principle you have the figures in the IT system. When you are working for a social business and you're looking for social figures, it's really very, very difficult. So to answer quickly your question, it's an art more than a science, but it's important to keep the idea to making that more and more scientific.
There is a direct emotional linkage between art and our hearts. So it's good that measuring impact links with our heart, but it also has to go through our brains as well.
Yes.
So that is understandable and comparable. You know? Gaspar, I'm conscious of time because we have 3 minutes left, but I want to understand whether French foundations have received money from 90-10 funds, and if that's not the case, why?
So in France, you have, I think, like in most places, operating foundations and grant-making foundations. Operating foundations tend to be, financed traditionally in the social economy sector. I don't know of a specific foundation tapping on the 90-10 opportunity, because it's something, and Emmanuel can comment to that, that you need to get structured, to receive that type of money and investment. And none of the operating foundations have gone that route, not necessarily needed. To weigh in on the 90-10 funds, I would say that it has certainly allowed a number of social economy players to diversify their sources of funding. One thing it has not done, and since we are looking forward to developments in Spain, one thing it has not done in France, whereas the structure could have allowed for that, is actually to go to the retail and go to the individuals. So if you achieve that, you will have cracked something, because it's offered to employees in companies, but the direct distribution by the asset managers still has some way to go.
Emmanuel, do you want to comment on this? Maybe to give you some color, we have the Association of Foundations as part of the Spain app as well. So they are looking to get private flow into foundations that are not large, while you have the other role of the large foundations who can be investors. Do you have any views on?
Well, I'm looking at the time, and I think we don't have so much.
Well, one minute.
I agree with him. No. I think the foundations have the capacity to show the way and to innovate. And since they are very special institutional investors, definitely they should be those who show the way. Yes. Okay.
It's great to moderate this panel that can moderate themselves, and are more conscious of time than I am. So just
I'm actually half German, so that's my German blood which says, well, we have to.
Now you lost all your credibility. Okay, as the final question is, can you provide just one single recommendation, each of you, to the Spanish impact investing ecosystem? What should we do to expand impact investing in Spain? And I'll start with Gaspar.
So, taking that foundation cap, I think, and we've not touched on Carasso, but that's exactly what they're doing, is that they're really trying to invest in disruptive models in their value chains of focus, which is art and citizenship and sustainable food systems, to allow for a major change from the bottom up. And I think what we've not touched on that in France, but what's been an achievement in France is that the social or ecological venture capital universe has developed quite strongly. And I think you need that. You need the disruptive players to come up, the social enterprises from the social economy, as well as more traditional corporate structure. And the Carasso fund that also invests in Spain does both. It has instruments for the social economy and traditional startups. And I think you need to nurture both universes to deliver change. But my big advice here is be this important layer of intentional, mission-driven capital, so that you can propel very confident models to the other layers when the institutional capital will come in, strong players that can achieve capital. Change at scale.
As we mentioned this morning. Thanks very much, Gaspar. Stanislas, what is your recommendation?
Well, I think you first need regulatory framework for social economy. We need to know where we invest. We need to get some reinsurance. So that's the case in France. It's pretty precise and open at the same time, and it's really important. And then, of course, you can regulate. You can have some regulatory framework for solidarity funds. But I think what is important in the development we've seen in France is also the implication of trade unions, big corporates, and local authorities. These implications, we got it through the importance of employee pension schemes. These are key. And it's also a very good solution for corporates. They have plenty of advantages. So I think that even if it's on the side of the issue, it's also a very interesting development. Get the trade unions along to help you develop with corporates the need for this solidarity investments.
And we witness, very interesting, we witness in Spain that through our allies, Spain Shift, we saw already the role of trade unions in impulsing sustainable investing, and now it's probably the time to get the trade unions involved in supporting impact investing as well. So, Emmanuel, your turn.
Well, my message is very simple. Don't try to imitate, but dare to innovate. Or to put it in the words of your famous poet, caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar.
Okay, we ran out of time. Really, thanks very much for all the advice, all the knowledge you shared, and for coming to Spain. We will bring you more often over here to continue this trip. Thanks very much.
Thank you.